The message arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was reviewing blueprints for the Henderson project. Construction management doesn't stop for personal drama, but Zoya's text made me pause mid-calculation. I'm at my grandmother's funeral. Don't call. I need time alone. I stared at the screen of my phone, sitting in my cluttered office at Coastal Construction. The message felt wrong somehow, not the words themselves, but the timing. Fina had seemed perfectly healthy when I'd seen her last month at the family barbecue, complaining about her arthritis but moving around like someone half her age. My name is Dean Callix, and I've been married to Zoya Callix for 8 years. 8 years of learning her patterns, her tells, her elaborate stories that always seemed to have convenient holes. This felt like another one of those stories. I didn't call. Instead, I archived the message in a special folder I'd created months ago, a digital collection of Zoya's increasingly suspicious communications. The folder was getting thick. My office phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Coastal Construction, Dean speaking. Dean, it's Vic from the site. We've got a problem with the foundation pour. Victor Kowalski had been my foreman for 3 years and my best friend for longer than that. If Vic said there was a problem, there was a problem. On my way, I said, pocketing my phone without responding to Zoya's message. The drive to the construction site gave me time to think. Zoya worked in human resources at a mid-sized insurance company downtown, the kind of place where office politics mattered more than actual work. She'd been staying late more often, claiming projects and deadlines that never seemed to materialize into anything concrete. The foundation issue turned out to be minor, a miscommunication with the concrete supplier that Vic had already resolved by the time I arrived, but he could tell something was bothering me. You look like someone stole your lunch money, Vic said, wiping concrete dust from his hands with a rag. What's eating you? I showed him Zoya's text. Vic read it twice, his expression growing more skeptical with each pass. Fina's not the type to go quietly, he said. That woman's got more fight in her than a cornered badger. When's the last time you talked to her? 3 weeks ago. She called to complain about Hayes not visiting enough. Hayes Relin was Zoya's stepfather, married to her mother Maren Hollis for the past 15 years. They lived in the kind of house that screamed old money. Not earned money, but inherited money that came with expectations and judgments about people like me who worked with their hands for a living. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Chen, a guy I'd known since high school, who now worked at the marina. The message was short. Dude, check this out, followed by a link to a live stream. I clicked the link without thinking much about it. The stream opened to show the interior of Bayside Rooftop, an upscale bar downtown that I'd been to exactly once, for Zoya's company Christmas party 2 years ago. The camera was shaky, clearly handheld, and the audio had that tinny quality of someone broadcasting from their phone. Then I saw her. Zoya was sitting at the bar, laughing at something the man next to her was saying. She was wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she claimed made her feel beautiful. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. This wasn't the appearance of someone grieving at a funeral. The man next to her was Beck Derron. Beck had been Zoya's college boyfriend, the one she'd dated before me. He'd moved back to town 6 months ago, something about starting an investment consulting business. Zoya had mentioned running into him a few times, always casual, always innocent. The timestamp on the stream showed 3:15 p.m. Current time. I watched for 30 seconds, long enough to see Beck's hand rest on Zoya's shoulder, long enough to see her lean into the touch, long enough to see her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. I screenshot the stream, saved the video file, and checked the metadata. Location services were enabled. The stream was definitely coming from Bayside Rooftop. The timestamp was accurate. Vic, I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. I need to make a phone call. I walked to my truck and dialed Marin and Hayes' number. Hayes answered on the second ring. "Dean, this is unexpected. How are you?" "I'm fine, Hayes. Quick question. Is Fina okay?" "Zoya texted that she's at the funeral." Silence on the other end. Then, "Funeral?" "Dean, we just finished lunch with Fina. She's sitting right here complaining about the restaurant's coffee." "What funeral?" The pieces clicked into place with crystalline clarity. I felt that familiar sensation I got when reviewing blueprints and finding a critical error, the moment when everything that seemed right revealed itself to be fundamentally wrong. "Hayes, I'm going to send you something. Can you check your messages?" I forwarded the live stream link along with a screenshot of Zoya's text. "Tell me what you think about this." I could hear muffled conversation on the other end, then Marin's voice in the background, sharp and angry. Hayes came back on the line. "Dean, we need to talk. Can you meet us at your house in an hour?" "I'll be there," I said. The drive home gave me time to plan. 8 years of marriage had taught me that Zoya was a master of deflection, capable of turning any confrontation into an attack on my character. She'd gaslight me about things I'd witnessed with my own eyes, make me question my own memory and perception. Not this time. I pulled into the driveway of our modest 2-story house in the older part of town. It wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garage I'd converted into a workshop, but it was ours. Or it had been ours. Inside, I went to my home office and printed everything. The text message, screenshots of the live stream, the metadata showing time and location. I created a timeline, cross-referencing Zoya's claimed location with the documented evidence of where she actually was. Then I went upstairs and began packing her things. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would come later. Right now, I was methodical, systematic, approaching this like any other construction project. You identify the problem, you gather your materials, you execute the solution. 2 suitcases and 3 boxes later, I had most of Zoya's belongings packed. I made an inventory list, noting everything I'd packed and where it had been located in the house. Documentation mattered. I carried everything to the front porch and arranged it neatly beside the door. Then I sat in my kitchen and waited. Marin and Hayes arrived first, pulling into my driveway in Hayes' pristine Mercedes. They looked like they were attending a board meeting, Marin in her pearls and blazer, Hayes in a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. I met them at the door with the folder of evidence. "Before we talk," I said, "I want you to see everything." We sat at my kitchen table while they reviewed the documents. Marin's face grew progressively paler as she absorbed the timeline. Hayes kept checking his watch against the timestamps, as if hoping the numbers would change. "This is from today?" Marin asked, pointing to the live stream screenshot. 30 minutes ago, I confirmed. "And this text about the funeral came 2 hours before that?" "Correct." Hayes leaned back in his chair, looking older than his 62 years. "Dean, I'm sorry. We had no idea we didn't know about any of this." "What do you want to do?" Marin asked. The question surprised me. I'd expected them to defend their daughter, to find some way to explain away the evidence. Instead, they were asking about my plans. "I want to wait," I said. "I want her to come home and explain this herself." We didn't have to wait long. Zoya's car pulled into the driveway at 6:23 p.m. Through the kitchen window, I watched her notice her belongings on the porch, watched her face cycle through confusion, realization, and finally calculation. Even from a distance, I could see her preparing her story. She came through the front door like she owned the place, which I suppose she still did, legally speaking. Her eyes swept the kitchen, taking in her parents sitting at the table with me, the folder of evidence spread between us. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice carrying just the right note of exhausted grief. "I just got back from the worst day of my life, and I find my things on the porch like I'm some kind of stranger." It was a good performance. If I hadn't seen the live stream, if I hadn't watched her laughing with Beck while claiming to be at a funeral, I might have believed her. "Sit down, Zoya," Marin said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Mom, I don't understand what's happening here. Grandma Fina's funeral was today, and instead of support from my family, I come home to some kind of intervention?" Hayes slid the folder across the table to her. "Your grandmother is fine, Zoya. We had lunch with her 3 hours ago." I watched Zoya's face as she opened the folder. The moment she saw the live stream screenshot, I knew she understood exactly how much trouble she was in. But instead of admitting anything, she doubled down. "This is ridiculous," she said, tossing the folder back across the table. "You're spying on me now? Taking pictures of me having a drink after the most difficult day of my life?" "The timestamp shows you were at the bar before you even sent the text about the funeral," I said quietly. "Timestamps can be wrong. Technology isn't perfect, Dean. You of all people should know that." It was classic Zoya. Attack the evidence, question the technology, make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. But this time, I had backup. "Call Fina," I said. "What?" "Call your grandmother, right now. Ask her about the funeral." Zoya's composure cracked for just a moment. "I'm not calling my grieving grandmother to satisfy your paranoid delusions." "She's not grieving," Marin said. "She's at home watching her stories and complaining about the neighbor's dog, same as every Tuesday." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Zoya looked from her mother to her stepfather to me, searching for an ally and finding none. "Fine," she said finally. "Maybe I wasn't at a funeral. Maybe I needed some time to think about our marriage, and maybe I didn't know how to tell you that without hurting your feelings. Is that a crime?" "With Beck Derron?" Hayes asked. Another crack in the facade. "Beck's just a friend. We ran into each other and I was upset, and he offered to buy me a drink. That's what friends do." "Friends don't live stream their drinks," I said. "And they don't lie about funerals to cover their tracks." Zoya stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You're all acting like I committed some terrible crime instead of just needing some space to think." "Space to think or space to cheat?" The words came out before I could stop them. "Cheat?" Zoya's voice rose to a pitch that would have shattered glass. "How dare you accuse me of cheating? I've been nothing but faithful to you for 8 years, and this is how you repay me? By stalking me and making accusations?" But her performance was losing steam. The righteous indignation felt forced, rehearsed. I'd heard variations of this speech before whenever I'd questioned her late nights or weekend work sessions. "Show me your phone," I said. "Excuse me?" "Your phone. Show me your messages with Beck. Show me how long you've been just friends." Zoya clutched her purse closer to her chest. "I'm not showing you anything. This is insane. You're acting like some kind of controlling husband from a movie." "Zoya," Marin said quietly, "just show him the phone." "No, Mom. I'm an adult woman, and I don't have to prove my innocence to anyone, especially not to a husband who clearly doesn't trust me." The kitchen fell silent, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Patterson's dog barking at something in her yard. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal house, except nothing about this was normal anymore. Hayes cleared his throat. "Zoya, we saw the live stream. We saw how comfortable you looked with Beck. We saw the way you were touching each other. You saw 2 friends having a drink. We saw our daughter lying about a funeral to spend time with another man," Marin said. "And we saw her get caught in that lie with evidence that can't be explained away." Zoya's face crumpled, but I couldn't tell if the tears were real or another performance. With Zoya, the line between genuine emotion and manipulation had always been blurry. "You don't understand," she said. "My marriage is falling apart. Dean works all the time, and when he's home, he's distant. Beck listens to me. He makes me feel like I matter." "So you fake a funeral to spend time with him?" I asked. I panicked, okay? I didn't know how to explain that I needed to see him without making it sound like what it wasn't. And what wasn't it exactly? Another long pause. Zoya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. It wasn't an affair. We're just friends. Good friends. Good friends who lie to their spouses about funerals. Good friends who understand each other in ways that apparently my own husband doesn't. The conversation was going in circles, and I was tired of it. 8 years of marriage, and it had come down to this: my wife lying about a funeral to spend time with her ex-boyfriend, then trying to make me feel guilty for catching her. I want you to leave, I said. This is my house too. And your things are on the porch. Zoya looked to her parents for support, but found none. Maren was staring at her hands, and Hayes was studying the evidence folder like it contained the secrets of the universe. Mom? You lied to us, Zoya, Maren said without looking up. You used your grandmother's name to cover up whatever this is with Beck. That's not the daughter we raised. So you're taking his side? We're not taking sides, Hayes said. We're looking at facts. And the facts say you weren't where you claimed to be, doing what you claimed to be doing. Zoya grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Fine. I'll stay at Beck's tonight. Maybe he'll show me the understanding and support that my own family won't. The front door slammed behind her, leaving the three of us sitting in the sudden quiet of my kitchen. I'm sorry, Dean, Maren said after a long moment. We had no idea she was capable of something like this. Neither did I admitted. But as I sat there with my in-laws, looking at the evidence of my wife's betrayal spread across my kitchen table, I realized that wasn't entirely true. There had been signs, small inconsistencies, unexplained absences, changes in her behavior that I'd chosen to ignore or rationalize away. The funeral lie was just the first domino to fall. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, I called my sister Kendra. She lived 2 hours north in Portland, where she ran a small private investigation business, specializing in insurance fraud and background checks. If anyone could help me understand the scope of what I was dealing with, it was her. You need to document everything, she said, after I'd explained the situation. And I mean everything. Every text, every call, every time she's claimed to be somewhere she wasn't. This isn't just about one lie. This is about a pattern. I've been keeping some records, I said, thinking about the folder of suspicious communications I'd been building. Good. Now you need to expand that. I'm driving down this afternoon. We're going to turn you into a one-man intelligence operation. Kendra arrived at 3 p.m. with a laptop bag and a grim expression. She was 2 years younger than me, but had always been the smarter one, the one who paid attention to details that others missed. Her work in private investigation had sharpened those skills to a razor's edge. Show me what you've got, she said, settling at my kitchen table. I brought out my folder, 6 months' worth of suspicious texts, photos, and inconsistencies. Kendra spread everything out and began organizing it chronologically. This is good work, she said after reviewing everything. You've got a solid foundation here. Now we need to build on it. She opened her laptop and pulled up a social media monitoring program I'd never seen before. What's Zoya's Instagram handle? I gave her the information, and within minutes, Kendra had pulled up months of posts, comments, and location data. The picture that emerged was troubling. Look at this, she said, pointing to a post from 3 weeks ago. She tagged herself at that new restaurant downtown, said she was there for a work dinner. But look at the comments. I leaned over her shoulder. Beck had commented on the post. Great seeing you tonight. Thanks for dinner. Could be innocent, I said. Could be, but look at this. She pulled up another post from 2 weeks ago. Zoya at a coffee shop, claiming to be meeting a client. Beck had liked the post within minutes of it being uploaded. He's monitoring her social media pretty closely for just a friend, Kendra observed. We spent the next 2 hours building a timeline of interactions between Zoya and Beck. The pattern that emerged was clear. They'd been in regular contact for months, meeting for coffee, lunch, and dinner with increasing frequency. The funeral lie wasn't a one-off, Kendra said. It was just the first time she got careless enough to get caught. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoya. "Can we talk? I'm ready to explain everything." I showed the message to Kendra, who shook her head. "Don't respond yet. Let her sweat for a while. Desperate people make mistakes." "I'm not trying to destroy her," I said. "I just want the truth. The truth is that your wife has been having an emotional affair at minimum, and probably a physical one. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I'd been thinking about that question since yesterday. The easy answer was divorce, cut my losses and move on. But 8 years of marriage wasn't something you just threw away without being absolutely certain. "I want to give her a chance to come clean," I said. "Complete honesty, full disclosure, and a commitment to rebuilding trust. And if she won't do that? Then I'll know where I stand." Kendra nodded approvingly. "That's fair. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that she's in too deep to come clean. People who lie about funerals aren't usually interested in sudden honesty." She was right, of course, but I had to try. I texted Zoya back. "Come by at 7. We'll talk." Her response was immediate. "Thank you. I love you." 3 words that should have made me feel better, but somehow made everything worse. Kendra packed up her laptop, but left me with a list of things to watch for during the conversation. If she's really committed to honesty, she'll answer direct questions directly. If she's still playing games, she'll deflect, minimize, and try to turn the focus back on you. What if she admits to the affair? Then you'll know you married someone who lies about funerals to cheat on her husband. That's valuable information. After Kendra left, I sat in my kitchen and tried to prepare for the conversation. Part of me hoped Zoya would walk through the door with a full confession and a plan to rebuild our marriage. Part of me hoped she'd give me a reason to walk away without looking back. Both parts of me were terrified of finding out which one would get their wish. Zoya arrived at exactly 7 p.m., looking like she'd spent the day at a spa. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her outfit carefully chosen to remind me of better times. She was dressed for seduction, not confession. "Hi," she said, hovering in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome in her own house. "Come in. Sit down." She chose the chair across from me at the kitchen table, the same chair she'd occupied during yesterday's confrontation. The folder of evidence was gone, but the memory of it hung in the air between us. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she began, "about needing honesty and trust in our marriage. You're right. I haven't been completely honest with you." It was a promising start, but something in her tone made me cautious. This felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this speech in the mirror. "I'm listening," I said. "Beck and I have been spending time together, but not in the way you think. He's been helping me work through some problems in our marriage, problems I didn't know how to talk to you about directly." "What kind of problems?" "We've been growing apart, Dean. You work constantly, and when you're home, you're thinking about work. I've been feeling neglected and unappreciated. Beck helped me understand that those feelings were valid." I felt the familiar twist in my stomach that came with Zoya's particular brand of manipulation. She was admitting to the meetings with Beck while simultaneously making them my fault. "So you lied about a funeral to get marriage counseling from your ex-boyfriend?" "I know how it sounds, but it wasn't like that. Beck understands me in ways that are hard to explain." "Try." She looked down at her hands, and I could see her calculating her next move. "He makes me feel beautiful, desired, like I matter to someone. And I don't? Not lately, no." The honesty of that statement hit me harder than I'd expected. Maybe I had been working too much, maybe I had been distant. But that didn't justify lying about funerals. If you were unhappy in our marriage, why didn't you talk to me about it? I tried. Remember last month when I suggested we take a weekend trip together? You said you were too busy with the Henderson project. Remember when I asked if we could have dinner out, just the two of us? You said we needed to save money for the house repairs. She wasn't wrong about those specific incidents, but she was wrong about the context. I'd suggested alternative dates for both activities, dates that she'd rejected because they conflicted with other plans. So you decided to get your emotional needs met by someone else? I decided to talk to someone who would listen to me without making me feel guilty for having needs. We were back to the circular logic that had defined too many of our arguments over the years. Zoya would present herself as the victim of my neglect. I would defend myself by pointing out her role in our problems, and we'd both walk away feeling misunderstood and resentful. Zoya, I said, I need you to answer a direct question with a direct answer. Are you having an affair with Beck? She looked me in the eye for the first time since she'd sat down. No, I am not having an affair with Beck Derron. Have you been physical with him in any way? We're friends, Dean. Friends hug. Friends touch each other's arms when they're talking. If you're asking if we've slept together, the answer is no. Have you kissed him? A pause that lasted just a fraction of a second too long. No. Have you told him things about our marriage that you haven't told me? I've talked to him about my feelings, yes. That's what friends do. Have you made plans to leave me for him? Of course not. Then why did you lie about the funeral? Another pause. Because I knew you wouldn't understand. I knew you'd react exactly the way you're reacting now, with suspicion and accusations instead of trying to understand why I needed to talk to someone else in the first place. I sat back in my chair, feeling exhausted. This conversation was following the exact script Kendra had predicted: minimal admissions, deflection of responsibility, and attempts to make me the villain of the story. What do you want from me, Zoya? I want my husband back. I want us to work on our marriage together instead of you working on construction projects and me working on staying sane. And Beck? Beck is a friend who helped me through a difficult time. I'm not going to apologize for having someone in my life who cares about my happiness. But you'll apologize for lying about a funeral? Yes, that was wrong and I'm sorry. I panicked and I made a bad decision. It won't happen again. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and tried to see past the performance to the person underneath. What I saw was someone who was sorry she'd been caught, not someone who was sorry for what she'd done. I need time to think, I said. How much time? I don't know. And what am I supposed to do while you're thinking? That's up to you. She stood up, smoothing down her dress. I'll be staying at Beck's until you decide whether you want to save our marriage or throw it away over one mistake. After she left, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process what had just happened. Zoya had admitted to an emotional affair while denying it was an affair. She'd apologized for lying while justifying the lie. She'd asked for forgiveness while making it clear that she wasn't planning to change anything about her relationship with Beck. It was masterful manipulation, and it might have worked if I hadn't spent the afternoon learning to recognize it. My phone rang. It was Kendra. How did it go? She asked. Exactly like you said it would. I'm sorry, Dean. I really hoped I'd be wrong. What's my next move? Document this conversation while it's fresh in your memory. Then start preparing for the possibility that your marriage is over. Any chance I'm overreacting? You caught your wife lying about a funeral to spend time with another man, and when confronted, she blamed you for making her do it. Does that sound like someone who's committed to rebuilding trust? It didn't, but admitting that meant admitting that 8 years of my life had been built on a foundation that was crumbling beneath my feet. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. Dean, whatever you decide to do, make sure you're protecting yourself. People who lie about funerals are capable of lying about other things too. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my kitchen and wondered how I'd gotten to this point. 24 hours ago, I'd been a happily married construction manager with normal problems and normal concerns. Now, I was a man whose wife was staying with her ex-boyfriend while claiming it wasn't an affair. The transformation had been swift and complete, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. But, unlike a building collapse, this disaster was far from over. The next morning brought a text from Tommy at the marina. Saw Zoya and Beck having breakfast at the Anchor Inn. Thought you should know. The Anchor Inn was a bed and breakfast on the other side of town, the kind of place couples went for romantic getaways. It wasn't the kind of place you'd take a friend for breakfast, unless that friendship had crossed some very specific lines. I forwarded the text to Kendra, who called me back within minutes. "How sure are you that Tommy's reliable?" she asked. "Very sure. He's not the type to stir up drama for fun." "Then your wife lied to you last night. She said she wasn't physical with Beck, but people don't stay at bed and breakfasts with their platonic friends." I'd reached the same conclusion, but hearing it confirmed made it feel more real. What do I do with this information? You could confront her again, but she'll just deny it or find a way to explain it away. Or you could gather more evidence and build a case that she can't wiggle out of. I'm not a lawyer, Kendra. I don't want to build a case. I want to save my marriage. Your marriage ended when she chose to lie about a funeral to be with another man. Now, you're just deciding how much evidence you need to accept that reality. It was harsh, but it was probably true. Still, I wasn't ready to give up completely. "Give me a few more days," I said. "If she's really having an affair, she'll slip up again. And if she's not, then maybe we can work through this." "Fine, but I'm coming back down this weekend. If you're going to play detective, you're going to do it right." After we hung up, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering to images of Zoya and Beck sharing breakfast at a romantic inn. Had they shared a room? Had they been planning this for weeks? Or was it a spontaneous decision after our conversation last night? The questions multiplied faster than I could answer them. Around noon, Vic found me staring at blueprints without really seeing them. "You look like someone ran over your dog," he said. "What's going on?" I'd been debating whether to tell anyone else about the situation, but Vic had been my friend long before he was my employee. If I couldn't trust him, I couldn't trust anyone. I told him everything: the funeral lie, the live stream, the confrontation with Zoya's parents, and last night's conversation. Vic listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as the story progressed. "That's messed up," he said when I finished. "Even for Zoya." "What do you mean, even for Zoya?" Vic looked uncomfortable. "Come on, Dean, you know she's always been dramatic. Remember the time she claimed her coworker was harassing her, and it turned out she'd been misinterpreting friendly conversation? Or when she said her boss was discriminating against her, and it turned out he was just holding her accountable for missed deadlines?" I remembered both incidents, and several others like them. Zoya had a pattern of interpreting ordinary interactions as personal attacks, then rallying support from friends and family to fight battles that existed mainly in her imagination. "This is different," I said. "This isn't about misunderstanding social cues. This is about lying to cover up an affair." "Is it? Or is it about her needing attention and validation and not caring who gets hurt in the process?" It was a distinction I hadn't considered. Maybe Zoya wasn't having a calculated affair so much as she was feeding an endless need for drama and excitement. The result was the same: a broken marriage. But the motivation mattered. "What would you do?" I asked. "Honestly, I'd cut my losses and run. But you're not me, and you've got 8 years invested in this. Just don't let her drag you down with her when she crashes." That afternoon, I received another text from Zoya. "I miss you. Can we try again?" This time I didn't consult with Kendra before responding. "Come by after work. We'll talk." She arrived at 5:30, still dressed for the office but looking less polished than she had the night before. There were circles under her eyes, and her smile seemed forced. Thank you for giving me another chance, she said, settling into the same chair as before. I haven't given you anything yet. I just agreed to listen. That's more than I deserve after yesterday. It was a good opening. Humble, contrite, focused on her responsibility rather than mine. Maybe she'd spent the day thinking about our conversation and decided to try a different approach. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, about honesty and trust. You're right that I haven't been completely honest with you. Go on. Beck and we did kiss. Once. It was after we'd been talking about my marriage, and I was emotional, and it just happened. But that's all it was. One kiss that we both regretted immediately. It was a partial confession, the kind of limited admission that revealed just enough truth to seem credible while hiding the larger deception. But it was progress. When did this happen? 2 weeks ago. We were at his apartment, and I was crying about how distant you'd been, and he was comforting me, and it just happened. You were at his apartment? A flash of something, annoyance, calculation, crossed her face. He was making dinner, as friends. It wasn't romantic. Friends who kiss? Friends who made a mistake. And last night, where did you sleep last night? At Beck's, on the couch. Tommy saw you having breakfast at the Anchor Inn this morning. The color drained from Zoya's face. For a moment, her careful composure cracked completely, and I saw something raw and desperate underneath. That's not... We weren't... Tommy must have been mistaken. He was pretty specific about the location and the time. Fine, we had breakfast there. Beck thought it would be nice to get out of his apartment, and the Anchor Inn has good coffee. It wasn't romantic. Did you stay there last night? No, I told you. I slept on Beck's couch. So you drove across town for breakfast at a bed and breakfast where you didn't spend the night? Yes. That doesn't make sense, Zoya. It doesn't have to make sense to you. Not everything I do is calculated to deceive you, Dean. Sometimes I just want good coffee and a nice atmosphere. We were back to the defensive posturing, but this time I could see the cracks in her story. She was lying about the Anchor Inn, which meant she was probably lying about everything else. I want to believe you, I said, but you've lied to me about so many things that I don't know what's true anymore. I've told you the truth about everything that matters. You lied about a funeral. I explained that. You lied about kissing Beck. I corrected that. You're lying about the Anchor Inn. I am not lying about the Anchor Inn. The conversation was deteriorating into the same circular pattern as the night before. Zoya would admit to small deceptions while denying larger ones, then get defensive when pressed for details. I need you to show me your phone, I said. We've been through this. I'm not showing you my phone. Then I can't trust anything you're telling me. So you're going to let our 8-year marriage end because I won't violate my own privacy? I'm going to let our 8-year marriage end because you lied about a funeral to spend time with another man, then continued lying when I gave you chances to come clean. Zoya stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with the same sound it had made the night before. Fine, she said. If you want to throw away everything we've built together over some paranoid fantasy about me and Beck, that's your choice. But don't pretend this is about honesty. This is about control. It's about trust. It's about you not being able to handle the fact that I have a life outside of this marriage. A life that includes lying about funerals. A life that includes friends who care about my happiness. She headed for the door, then turned back. I'll be at Beck's if you change your mind about wanting to save our marriage. After she left, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process what had just happened. Zoya had admitted to kissing Beck, denied staying at the Anchor Inn, and framed my request for honesty as an attempt to control her. It was progress of a sort. Now I knew for certain that she was still lying. The question was, what was I going to do about it? My phone rang. It was Marin. Dean, I hope you don't mind me calling. Hayes and I have been worried about you. I'm managing, I said. We saw Zoya and Beck at the Anchor Inn this morning. They looked very comfortable together. So Tommy hadn't been the only one to notice them. She claims they were just having breakfast. At a bed and breakfast? Dean, people don't go to the Anchor Inn for the coffee? I know. What are you going to do? It was the same question everyone kept asking me, and I still didn't have a good answer. What I wanted to do was wake up and discover that the last 3 days had been a nightmare. What I needed to do was accept that my marriage was over and start planning for a future without Zoya. What I was actually going to do was give her one more chance to tell me the truth. I'm going to wait and see what happens next, I said. Don't wait too long, Maren said gently. Some things can't be fixed, no matter how much we want them to be. After we hung up, I realized that Zoya's own mother had given up on her. If Maren, who had spent 32 years making excuses for her daughter's behavior, thought the situation was hopeless, then maybe it really was. But I still wasn't ready to accept that reality. Not yet. Friday morning brought a surprise. Zoya's car in my driveway and a text message waiting on my phone. I'm ready to tell you everything. Please give me one last chance. I found her sitting on my front porch, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. She was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual, carefully coordinated outfits, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. I've been up all night thinking, she said as I approached, about us, about Beck, about the lies I've been telling. You deserve better than what I've been giving you. I unlocked the front door and gestured for her to come inside. Part of me wanted to believe that she'd finally reached a moment of genuine clarity, but experience had taught me to be cautious about Zoya's moments of apparent vulnerability. I'm listening, I said as we settled at the kitchen table. Beck and I have been having an affair, she said without preamble. Not just emotional, physical. It started 6 months ago, and it's been going on ever since. The admission hit me like a punch to the stomach, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing the words spoken aloud made them real in a way that speculation and evidence never could. How many times? Does it matter? It matters to me. She looked down at her hands. Dozens. We've been meeting 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes at his apartment, sometimes at hotels. The Anchor Inn was just the most recent. And the funeral lie? We had plans to spend the afternoon together, and I panicked when you asked what I was doing. The funeral was the first thing that came to mind. Why Fina? Because I knew you wouldn't call to check on her. I thought it was safe. The calculation behind the lie was almost as hurtful as the affair itself. Zoya had weaponized my respect for her family's privacy, turning it into a tool for deception. Why are you telling me this now? Because Beck wants me to leave you and move in with him, and I'm not sure that's what I want. There it was, the real reason for this sudden honesty. Zoya wasn't confessing because she felt guilty about lying to me. She was confessing because she needed help deciding between 2 men. What do you want? I want to go back to the way things were before I met Beck. I want to forget this ever happened and rebuild our marriage. You can't unring a bell, Zoya. I know that. But people work through affairs all the time. We could go to counseling, take a vacation, start over somewhere new. I studied my wife's face, looking for signs of genuine remorse or commitment. What I saw was desperation. Not the desperation of someone who was afraid of losing me, but the desperation of someone who was afraid of making the wrong choice. Do you love him? The question seemed to catch her off guard. It's complicated. It's not complicated. Either you love him or you don't. I care about him. He makes me feel things that I haven't felt in a long time. Do you love me? Another pause. I love the life we built together. I love the stability and security you provide. I love the idea of us. But do you love me? I don't know anymore. It was the most honest thing she'd said in days, and it was also the answer that made my decision for me. "I want you to pack the rest of your things," I said quietly. "I want you to move in with Beck, or find your own place, or move back in with your parents. I don't care where you go, but I want you to go." "Dean, please, don't make any permanent decisions while you're angry." "I'm not angry. I'm tired. I'm tired of being lied to, tired of being manipulated, tired of competing with other men for my wife's attention. It doesn't have to be like this. We can work through this." "No, we can't. Because you don't want to work through this. You want me to forgive you so you can keep your options open. You want the security of being married to me and the excitement of being with Beck." Zoya's face crumpled, but I couldn't tell if the tears were real or another performance. After 8 years of marriage and 3 days of lies, I'd lost the ability to distinguish between her genuine emotions and her calculated displays. "I'll file for divorce on Monday," I said. "You can contest it if you want, but I have enough evidence of adultery to make things very unpleasant for both you and Beck." "You recorded our conversations?" "I documented everything. The funeral lie, the live stream, the contradictions in your story, the witnesses who saw you at the Anchor Inn, your own admission of a 6-month affair." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You've been planning this." "I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." Zoya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What about the house?" "We'll figure that out through lawyers." "What about our friends?" "What about them?" "What are you going to tell people?" It was such a typically Zoya question, more concerned about managing her image than addressing the consequences of her actions. "I'm going to tell them the truth, that you had an affair and our marriage ended. That's going to ruin my reputation. You should have thought about that before you lied about a funeral to cheat on your husband." She sat in silence for several minutes, and I could almost see her mind working through the implications of what I'd said. Her job, her social circle, her standing in the community, all of it would be affected by the revelation of her affair. "Is there anything I can do to change your mind?" "No." "What if I cut off all contact with Beck?" "It's too late for that." "What if we moved away and started fresh somewhere else?" "It's too late for that, too." She nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting the reality of the situation. "I'll pack my things this weekend." "Thank you." "Dean?" "Yeah?" "I am sorry. Not just sorry I got caught. Sorry I hurt you. You didn't deserve any of this." It was the closest thing to genuine remorse I'd heard from her since this whole mess started. It didn't change anything, but it made me feel slightly less like I'd wasted 8 years of my life on someone who was incapable of caring about anyone but herself. "I know," I said. After she left, I called Kendra to update her on the situation. "How do you feel?" she asked after I'd recounted the conversation. "Relieved mostly, and sad. But not angry anymore. That's healthy. Anger would just eat you up from the inside." She admitted to everything, the affair, the lies, all of it. "Good. That'll make the divorce proceedings much simpler. I keep thinking I should feel more upset about this. 8 years of marriage, and I'm ready to walk away after one conversation." "Maybe that tells you something about the state of your marriage before all this happened?" She was probably right. Looking back, I could see that Zoya and I had been growing apart for months, maybe years. The affair was just the final symptom of a relationship that had been slowly deteriorating. "What's next?" I asked. "You call a lawyer, file the papers, and start building a new life. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be better than staying married to someone who lies about funerals to cheat on you." That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer and tried to imagine what my life would look like in 6 months. No more wondering where Zoya was or who she was with. No more analyzing her stories for inconsistencies. No more feeling like I was competing for attention with men from her past. It would be lonely, at least at first. but it would also be honest in a way that my marriage hadn't been for a long time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Beck. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. I'd said everything I needed to say to Zoya, and I had nothing to say to the man who'd helped her destroy our marriage. Whatever Beck wanted to discuss, he could discuss it with my lawyer. The weekend passed quietly. Zoya came by Saturday morning with boxes and a rental truck, accompanied by 2 friends from her office who avoided eye contact with me. I stayed in my workshop while she packed, emerging only after I heard the truck drive away. The house felt different without her things, not empty exactly, but lighter somehow. Like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. Monday morning, I met with Jennifer Walsh, the divorce attorney Kendra had recommended. She was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in cases involving adultery and financial misconduct. "Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, this should be relatively straightforward," she said after reviewing my documentation. "Maine allows for no-fault divorce, but the adultery gives us leverage in property division and spousal support negotiations." "I don't want to destroy her financially," I said. "I just want out." "That's admirable, but don't be too generous. She made choices that ended your marriage. She should bear some responsibility for the consequences." I signed the necessary papers and authorized Jennifer to file the divorce petition. After 8 years of marriage, it took less than an hour to begin the legal process of ending it. That afternoon, I received a call from Hayes. "Dean, I wanted to check on you. Maren and I heard about the divorce. I'm doing okay. Better than I expected, actually. We want you to know that we don't blame you for any of this. Zoya made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences." "I appreciate that, Hayes. I really do. There's something else you should know. Beck called us yesterday asking if we could talk some sense into you. Apparently he thinks this whole situation is just a misunderstanding that can be worked out." I wasn't surprised. Beck had probably convinced himself that he was the hero of this story, rescuing Zoya from an unhappy marriage. The reality, that he was a homewrecker who'd helped a married woman lie to her husband, was probably too uncomfortable for him to acknowledge. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that if he wanted to discuss our daughter's marriage, he could start by not sleeping with her while she was still married to someone else." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. Hayes might be old money and formal manners, but he could be surprisingly direct when the situation called for it. "How's Fina handling all this?" "She's furious. Not at you, at Zoya. She keeps saying that anyone who would lie about a funeral deserves whatever happens to them." Tuesday brought another surprise, a visit from Barb, the office manager at Zoya's company. She appeared at my construction site around lunchtime, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I hope you don't mind me coming by," she said. "I wanted to talk to you about Zoya." Barb was in her 50s, a no-nonsense woman who'd worked in HR for 20 years and had seen every kind of office drama imaginable. If she was making a special trip to see me, it was important. "What's on your mind?" I asked. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think you have a right to know. Zoya's been telling people at work that you were abusive and controlling, and that's why she had to seek comfort from Beck." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I'd expected Zoya to spin the story in her favor, but I hadn't expected her to accuse me of abuse. "That's not true," I said. "I know it's not. I've met you at company functions, and I've heard Zoya talk about you for years. You're not an abusive man, Dean, but she's convincing and some people are starting to believe her." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's not fair, and because I think you should know what you're up against if this gets ugly." I thanked Barb for the warning and spent the rest of the day thinking about the implications. If Zoya was willing to falsely accuse me of abuse, what else might she be willing to do to protect her reputation? That evening, I called Jennifer Walsh and told her about Barb's visit. "This isn't uncommon," she said. "When people get caught cheating, they often try to reframe the narrative to make themselves the victim. We'll need to be prepared for her to make similar claims in the divorce proceedings. Can she do that? Just lie about abuse? She can try, but you've got a strong paper trail of her deception and no history of domestic violence calls or restraining orders. Her credibility is already compromised by the affair. What if she files a restraining order based on false claims? Then we'll fight it, but let's not borrow trouble. Focus on documenting everything and staying away from her and Beck. Don't give her any ammunition to use against you. Wednesday brought the text I'd been expecting. Please call me. We need to talk. Zoya. I showed the message to Kendra, who was visiting for the day. Don't respond, she said immediately. She's probably heard that you know about her spreading abuse allegations. She wants to do damage control. What if she has something important to say? Like what? An apology? An explanation? Dean, she lied about a funeral to cheat on you, then lied about abuse to cover her tracks. What could she possibly say that would matter at this point? She was right, of course. But part of me was curious about what Zoya wanted to discuss. Was she going to admit to the false abuse allegations? Offer some kind of deal to make the divorce go smoothly? Or was this just another attempt at manipulation? My phone rang. It was Tommy from the marina. Dean, you need to know something. Beck's been around here asking questions about you, where you hang out, what your schedule is like, whether you have a temper. It's making people uncomfortable. What kind of questions? Like he's trying to find evidence that you're dangerous or unstable. A few people told him to get lost, but he's persistent. So Beck was actively helping Zoya build a case against me. It wasn't enough for them to destroy my marriage. Now they wanted to destroy my reputation, too. Thanks for the heads up, Tommy. No problem. And Dean? Everyone here knows what really happened. Nobody's buying their story about you being the bad guy. That was reassuring. But it didn't change the fact that Zoya and Beck were working together to paint me as an abusive husband. The question was, how far were they willing to go? Thursday morning answered that question. I arrived at work to find 2 police officers waiting for me. Dean Callix? One of them asked. That's me. We need to ask you some questions about an incident involving your wife. My stomach dropped. What kind of incident? She filed a report claiming that you threatened her during a phone conversation yesterday. We need to get your side of the story. I haven't talked to my wife since Friday. I haven't called her, texted her, or had any contact with her whatsoever. The officers exchanged glances. Can you prove that? I pulled out my phone and showed them my call log and text history. The last communication with Zoya was from the previous week. She also claims you've been following her and her friend Beck around town, taking pictures and harassing them. That's completely false. I can provide witnesses who can account for my whereabouts, and I've been working here every day. The officers took my statement and left, but not before warning me to avoid any contact with Zoya or Beck. It was a reasonable request, but it also put me in the position of having to prove a negative, that I wasn't doing things I'd never done in the first place. I called Jennifer Walsh immediately. This is escalating faster than I expected, she said. File a counter-complaint for filing a false police report, and start documenting everything, where you go, who you're with, what you do. If she's going to play games, we need to be ready. Why is she doing this? Because she's desperate. Her affair is about to become public knowledge, her marriage is over, and her reputation is in ruins. False accusations are a way to shift blame and generate sympathy. Will it work? Not if we handle it right, but it's going to get ugly before it gets better. That evening, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process how quickly my life had changed. A week ago, my biggest concern had been a foundation pour for the Henderson project. Now I was dealing with divorce proceedings, false accusations of abuse, and police visits. All because my wife had lied about a funeral to spend time with her ex-boyfriend. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop harassing Zoya or you'll regret it. Beck. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Jennifer Walsh with a note. Exhibit A in the harassment case. Then I poured myself a drink and tried to figure out how much worse things could get before they started getting better. The divorce was finalized on a cold Tuesday in February. Jennifer Walsh had been right. Zoya's credibility issues made her false accusations easy to disprove, and the evidence of her affair made the property division straightforward. She got half the value of the house after I bought out her share, and I kept my business and retirement accounts. Beck's threatening text had backfired spectacularly. When combined with witness statements about his harassment of my friends and co-workers, it resulted in a restraining order that prohibited both him and Zoya from contacting me directly or indirectly. The abuse allegations never gained traction. Too many people knew me too well, and Zoya's history of dramatic exaggerations worked against her. When word got out about the funeral lie and the 6-month affair, public sympathy shifted decisively in my direction. Zoya lost her job 3 months after our separation. Officially, it was due to budget cuts, but Barb later told me that her false abuse allegations had created a hostile work environment that the company couldn't ignore. Her reputation in the local HR community was effectively destroyed. She and Beck moved to Portland shortly after the divorce was finalized. I heard through mutual acquaintances that their relationship didn't survive the stress of the scandal and the legal proceedings. Apparently, Beck hadn't signed up to be the villain in a small-town drama, and Zoya hadn't signed up to lose everything for a man who abandoned her when things got difficult. I kept the house and slowly made it my own. The rooms that had once felt empty now felt peaceful. I dated a few women, nothing serious, but I was in no hurry to remarry. 8 years with Zoya had taught me the value of honesty and trust, qualities I wouldn't compromise on again. Kendra visited regularly, proud of her brother for handling a difficult situation with dignity and intelligence. Vic remained my best friend and most trusted employee, never once saying, "I told you so," even though he'd seen through Zoya's act years before I did. Marin and Hayes stayed in touch, apologizing repeatedly for their daughter's behavior and expressing genuine affection for the son-in-law they'd lost. Fina sent me a Christmas card with a note. "Anyone who lies about funerals gets what they deserve. You're better off without her." The whole experience had lasted less than 2 weeks from the first lie to the final confrontation, but it had changed everything. I learned that people are capable of breathtaking deception, that trust once broken is nearly impossible to rebuild, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their destructive behavior. Most importantly, I learned that a marriage built on lies will always collapse under the weight of the truth, and that sometimes the collapse is the best thing that could happen to everyone involved. The funeral lie had been meant to hide an affair, but it had actually revealed the true nature of my marriage. For that, in a strange way, I was grateful. My phone never buzzed with mysterious texts anymore. My evenings were spent on projects I chose, with people I trusted. My sleep was peaceful, untroubled by doubts about where my spouse really was or what she was really doing. It was a good life, honest, straightforward, and entirely my own. And it had all started with a simple reply to a devastating lie. My condolences.